The entire defensive staff at LSU is gone. Brian Kelly making changes. So what's next for LSU? What's next for the next DC? As Matt House, obviously, as what I just mentioned, he's no longer going to be the guy calling the defense. It's probably had to happen. I think there's an argument to be made of, could you have waited longer to make this happen? Do you let it go another season? Again, I think by nature of what you had offensively, by nature of what you expect at LSU, this was the right move. We'll talk about it right now, though. First things first, make sure you subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel, talking college football every single day. LSU fans, we're going to talk a lot about your Tigers. Going to talk about whoever you get as your next DC when that time comes. We have a couple of potential guys to look at here when the search party kind of gets rolling, but make sure you subscribe. We appreciate y'all in advance for that. So, under Matt House, this defense had two different kind of seasons. The first, it was they were holding the whole operation together because Jaden Daniels hadn't really found his footing last season, and the defense did a great job. Held the opposition to 22.5 points a game. Harold Perkins bursts on the scene. There's a lot of optimism going into this 2023 campaign. And then you kind of had the entire script flip itself, where Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman Trophy. You have the best offense in America, and the defense can't stop anybody. I mean, allowed almost 30 points a game. You can't do that, not just in the SEC, but across the college football landscape. When you want to compete for what Brian Kelly wants to compete for, what LSU expects to compete for, which is SEC titles and national titles, you got to have something on the defensive side of the football. So to me, what this says is Brian Kelly is not negotiating with average. He knows what he wants at LSU. He knows why he came to LSU. He could have stayed at Notre Dame and kept trying to find a way to build that thing into a national title contender, but that was one of the things that he talked about with coming to LSU. I want to compete against the best, and I want to compete for the best. So what he's saying with this move is, I'm not negotiating with mediocre. I'm not negotiating with average. We have one goal. This part of our football team is going to keep us from achieving that goal. I'm not going to sit here next year and try to see if maybe we can capture that 2022 magic and kind of get this thing headed the right direction. They have way too much talent on that side of the football to play the way they did this past season. And now a lot of people may say, if you want him to stay for another year, Matt House, the entire defensive side of the staff for LSU, you say, well, hey, we portaled in an entire secondary. We kind of tried to find a way to somehow makeshift a secondary and find a way to compete in the SEC. Well, my pushback on that would be, well, okay, if you portal in a secondary and your secondary wasn't very good, then you missed on your evaluations, which in my opinion is just as bad as having a defense that's not good enough on the field. So at the end of the day here, like that was probably the right move that had to happen. And you credit Brian Kelly for not settling and understanding what he wants to get done and not apologizing for having an extremely high standard and getting it done. Now, I think the need for change on the defensive side of the football was magnified by how good the offense was. Because it's bad to have a bad defense. It's much worse to have a bad defense when you have a national title level offense. The offense averaged over 40 points a game. We all know what Jaden Daniels did, being the best player in America and winning the Heisman Trophy. Like, as a coach, you grind the entirety of a year to tinker with the formula of your football team to get both sides right to compete for the most prestigious hardware you can. And you got it right on the offensive side of the football. You had a national championship caliber offense. But with how bad the defense was, that totally hamstrung what LSU was overall as a football team. So again, I think how bad the defense was put under a microscope because the offense is out there scoring over 40 a game and giving you a chance in every football game, but the defense just can't hold up their end of the bargain. So you look at what they were last year, and I think if you didn't have Jaden Daniels playing quarterback for you, LSU's like scratching and fighting and clawing to make a bowl game. It's unfortunate, but I think that's true. So now the big question everyone's going to ask here is, what's next? Who's the right guy? I was on radio earlier with Hunt Palmer, who does a radio show on ESPN Baton Rouge. We call every week, and I think he said it perfectly, where it's like there are so many names that are going to be thrown out there for this job to where it's almost a fool's errand to try and nail down exactly who that right guy is. Couple of names, though, that I think are worth looking at. Jim Leonard. This is for any job across the country if you have a DC vacancy. If you can somehow, some way, find a way to hire Jim Leonard to be your next DC, because it sounds like he wants to stay, where he is with his family and things like that. if you can find a way to make him your next DC, you do that. You don't ask any other questions. His resume speaks for itself. What he did at Wisconsin, what he did as a player, the way that he's been able to build great defenses, over the time of his coaching career. Like, you hire him and you don't think twice about it. NFL pedigree, and like I said, doing great things at the college level. Now, Zach Arnett was one of the first names that I think makes sense. And talking to Hunt about this, there is buzz in Baton Rouge that when Ed Orgeron was looking to hire his DC, Zach Arnett and him had an interview, and the story is, or the buzz is rather, that the interview went very, very poorly. So for me, unless it was just Step Brothers style, where Zach Arnett shows up with his brother and they're in tuxedos and they ask Ed Orgeron how much he makes and they say, we're interviewing you, like, unless it was something wild like that, I would say bring Zach Arnett in for another interview. Because what he had at Mississippi State, being thrown the keys to a program when probably it was, I think, just unwinnable circumstances for him. I don't fault him for that. I think he's still a really good DC. His time at San Diego State shows that. I would give him another chance. He knows what the SEC is like. I think that would make sense. Here's what I would say, though, if you're LSU. Regardless of who you hire, you can swing big. You don't need to go and hire some up-and-coming position coach. You don't need to go hire some up-and-coming G5 DC. You can go out there and find the most proven commodity possible to be your DC. Because Brian Kelly, he's already kind of got this offense to a place. If you can get Jaden Daniels and his production to, sort of transfer over to whoever the next guy is playing quarterback. I don't mean production from like a kind of player he is, but I mean, if you can keep this offense humming the way that it was last season, with Joe Sloan, I would have to imagine having a pretty large hand in that, which, with whatever responsibility he has, you're in good shape. Again, the talent level is way too high on this roster to look the way they did last year defensively. And LSU, we know what they've been defensively over the last couple of years. They have a reputation and an edge that precedes them. They are headhunters. They are the hammer, not the nail. They are aggressive. Like, the brand of LSU defensive football has a little bit of mystique to it. You bring someone in that understands that and is going to do a good job upholding that. So good for Brian Kelly for saying, you know what, I've seen all I need to see. We got a standard around here, and the offense matched it, the defense didn't. We're making changes. Whoever it is, though, we will have thoughts on it immediately. So make sure you're subscribed right here. We'll track this thing all the way through. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Let me know on Twitter and Instagram at Jody Pickell who you want to see as the next DC in Baton Rouge. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.